Hi, listeners.
Hello. Welcome to the MedInsights Unleashed podcast
With your hosts,
Z.
and John. Well, good morning to our listeners at MedInsights Unleashed. We have two really great speakers with us today to talk about degenerative disc disease. About 80% of patients will have at least one occurrence of back pain in their time, and 13% of those will go on to develop really substantially chronic degenerative disc disease. And this is what our topic is today. With us this morning, we have Mr. Bill Niland, who's the CEO of ReGelTec Incorporated and also co-founder with Dr. Tony Lowman, who's also the Chief Medical Officer for ReGelTec Incorporated. So welcome to both of you, and thank you very much for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Bill, you're the co-founder, and Tony, so really, how did you discover Hydrafil, and what does it actually do? Because that can have substantial impact and benefit for patients with degenerative disc disease. So can you explain about how it came about that you two got together, and then the research that's being done associated with Hydrafil?
This is Bill. I'm more the business side of the company. Dr. Lowman is actually the inventor of the gel. So I'll let Dr. Lowman kind of tell you about the history of making Hydrafil and how it came about. And then we can talk about how we got together. But I'll let him talk about that first.
Yeah, I love to start. I love to tell this story. So this Hydrafil really is a story of a 25-year journey, my career. So when I was a young assistant professor just starting out in Philadelphia, I was working on a number of different hydrogels and was approached by a colleague who saw what I was doing and said, "Hey, have you ever looked at using your hydrogel for degenerative disc disease, for the nucleus pulposus?" I had no idea what they were talking about, but I took a look at it. I understood the problem. And we began working together, consulting with some doctors in the region, some spine surgeons in the region. Obviously, this is around 2000, so the field was quite different. We came up with a concept. We wrote some proposals. We got some funding. In 2002, we had some patents, and we had to make a decision on what to do with these patents. So we decided to start our own company. So it was two young professors, a material scientist, myself, a biomaterial scientist, and we met a gentleman who had been inside of a large device company who was moving into semi-retirement. And so we said, "I'll tell you what, how about you become the business guy? We'll be the science people. Let's start a company and create a device." From there, timing on everything we did worked out very well. We got some venture funding. We started working with a big orthopedic device company in our backyard. And pretty quickly, they turned this company into something that they decided they wanted to acquire, which really all it meant was they brought the project in-house. We wrote a lot of academic papers. We did a lot of great studies learning about the mechanics, the biocompatibility, how it interacted with different tissues. And the company took it to clinical trials in 2006, mixed success failure. And they thought, well, this could be a viable product. But we were doing a lot of research in my lab. I was reformulating from 2008 to 2012. This became more of a research project in my lab. The orthopedic device company got acquired. The spine market collapsed. I kept working on this on my own, moved universities. And in 2016, when the spine market kind of started heating up again, one of my former colleagues approached me about starting a company, which we did. We got some funding. We built a prototype. And in 2018, I met Bill. And through an encounter, I happened to work at the university where Bill is an alum, and we met for lunch. And I'll let Bill take it from there.
Can you describe what the nucleus pulposus is, and then describe what the structure of the vertebra is and
Yeah,
why
sure.
you actually developed this?
Sure. So I developed it because lumbar back pain. So lower back pain is a huge really cost on our healthcare system, right? And the numbers I saw, which are in the, sometimes quoted as high as 50 billion, it becomes staggering. You're thinking, wow, that's a lot of devices, that's a lot of treatment. But really what that also includes is lost productivity. So people with lower back pain, they're in a lot of pain, a lot of disability, can't work, can't enjoy life, can't enjoy a lot of normal activity. The pain is that debilitating. So from the side of being a biomedical engineer, that caught my attention. Now they then folks laid out the problem. So your disc is made up really of a couple vertebral bodies, kind of the end plates, and between these bony segments in your vertebrae is the actual disc itself, which has the annulus fibrosus, which is the outer shell, and then a gelatinous core. So, which is very much like a hydrogel. And when we're young and we're healthy, this gelatinous core has a lot of water. It's your natural shock absorber. It allows us to run, jump, twist, bend, everything we want to do. As we get older, these molecules start breaking down like everything else. And eventually you start to lose your water. So the analogy a lot of people say is you start to run your tire on your car. You start to lose air in your tire. And as you run on a lower pressure tire, a lot of bad things happen. You break your axle, your alignment goes out of whack. On our case, we start to get pain. And eventually you get into this cycle where it gets worse and worse and worse. What we came up with first was to take a solid hydrogel and put it in surgically. And that's the approach that but didn't work. But what we came up with was we found a way to take the gel we knew, generation one, had the right biocompatibility, the right mechanical properties, the right interaction with the tissue, the right ability to swell in the disc. And rather than doing a surgical procedure, we found a way to melt this gel outside the body, inject it into the disc with a small needle, and when it goes into the disc, it forms a gel, and this gel really restores a lot of the properties that were missing. So it hydrates the disc. It brings water back to your disc, which is needed to create those pressures. It restores the loading. And what we found out is it actually helps reduce the inflammation in the disc, which is the inflammation is which generates all of the molecules that leak out, that inflame the tissue, that causes a lot of the pain from the nerve roots.
In the inflammatory process in chronic disc degeneration, does it have an anti-inflammatory effect on the outside of the disc once it's injected into the disc?
So what it does is it is really because it brings back water to the disc and it also seals up the disc because it fills the space. It one restores the loading and hydration, which slows down the production of the degeneration molecules. So there's markers that are associated with disc degeneration. Those markers in a damaged disc leak out and they cause pain outside the disc. What we've done is we've reduced the production of these markers because these markers are produced by the off-axis loading. We restore the loading. They're produced because of the dehydration of the disc, so the lack of water accelerates the breakdown, and these markers leak out and they cause the pain.
We're talking to people that may or may not know anything about physiology and anatomy that will be listening to this. So if you could explain some of those markers so that they could understand that more.
I mean, specific marker, the biggest marker is there's a marker IL-6, which is probably the biggest marker to what your body produces when the disc degenerates. And inside the disc, when that marker is produced in a severely degenerated disc, it leaks out of the disc into the space in your spinal canal where we have a lot of nerves. It creates inflammation, and that inflammation causes the pain. Done is we've sealed the flat tire and we've given it enough air in that tire so that we actually are running more normal again. So we got enough pressure in your tire. You're not going to break your axle. Your car's not bouncing around. You're going to have a comfortable ride.
To bring Bill into the conversation, Bill, and you can describe your role within ReGelTec Incorporated, your role between you and Tony, and how you're forging ahead with the research that both of you are doing.
Yeah, I did. Tony said I met Tony. I was an alumni of Rowan University, where at the time, Tony was the dean of the engineering program. He's now gone up to being the chancellor of the university.
Yes, congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
And yeah, we met in a brief meeting. I was running a different company at the time. I was running a company in the mitral valve repair space. I've had 3 back surgeries in my life, more from herniated discs, but I knew quite a bit from going through those surgeries and thought it was really compelling. We all talked about it and felt there was a big market and a big need, and the product could bring something great to a lot of people who were hurting from chronic pain. And we put the company together in 2018. You know, my job, and I've run 3 medical device companies so far, is to raise capital. It's very expensive to get a product to market, especially a class 3 device that this is with the FDA, which is a injectable. It's considered an injectable permanent implant. So there's a lot of work to do there. So we started doing early animal work, and like the FDA makes you do. And so we've raised money. I continue to raise money. That's the main job of the CEO, is to make sure the company doesn't run out of money. Like, it's expensive getting a class 3 device to market, like I said before. So yes, we've continued on. We did our early first in man and first in human work down in Colombia, South America, through a CRO that I knew that helped take people down there. Unfortunately, it started during COVID, so it took us a while, but we did our first patient in August of 2020 when we were allowed to fly into the country. We did 20 patients between August and December of that year. We let those patients go out about 8 to 9 months to make sure everything was okay. We made some adjustments, obviously, like you do on your first patients, and then did a second set of 20 patients in late in 21, and kept on learning from those patients and who the right patient was and who the wrong patient was. Then we moved to a site in Calgary, Canada, with another doctor who was known to us, and did another 35 patients up in Calgary, Canada, until earlier this year, and started our US PMA trial, which is a large trial of 225 patients in the US. We have 11 sites up and running right now. We have the ability to go to 25 sites. This is our large trial to get approved for commercialization in the USA. And this trial will probably take 2 more years to fully enroll those 225 patients. We'll probably go to about 20 total sites, and we continue to do that. In April of this year, we were approved. It's called CE-MDR, which gave us approval to be commercial and start selling product in the EU and in the UK. So we're in the process of working with a potential partner to handle those sales for us, because we're really focused on the US trial. So hopefully Hydrafil will be available in mid-26 through our partner in the EU and the UK.
Can we talk about the first 75 patients? You did mention, Bill, that, and we did briefly talk about it before we started this conversation, about the patients that are suitable for Hydrafil versus those that are contraindicated. So we all get disc herniation initially. Are these patients involved with the Hydrafil? Do you have to exclude these patients because they've initially got a bulge, and then adding Hydrafil may actually cause more inflammatory response or pressure? Who is in the trial and who's not in the trial?
Okay, so in the trial, we are not doing patients with herniated discs or uncontained bulge. So a contained bulge, we could do a patient with a contained bulge. That means none of the existing nucleus material has gone outside of the annulus, right? It's contained in the annulus. But we really are looking for patients with true degenerative disc disease who have not had herniations or surgery from herniations. That could be something we do down the road. But right now in this trial, these are patients with chronic disc degeneration in the lumbar region.
In the disc degeneration chronic form, some of us suffer from stenosis. Are these patients included in the trial, or are they excluded?
Yeah, patients with mild stenosis are okay for our trial, but right now we're kind of cutting it off at moderate to severe stenosis.
How does the hydrofil impact on the spurs around the vertebra?
The gel itself, no, really don't have a a lot of impact. Those spurs tend to be really at the most severe cases of degeneration, and almost usually you'll see the spurs will be associated with some other contraindicated reason why the patient wouldn't qualify for the trial. But those alone wouldn't be excluded.
How is the gel actually inserted? Is it guided through MRI, through ultrasonic?
It's fluoro, so it's live X-ray. Patient's laying prone on a table, and it's inserted through a spinal needle, 17 gauge spinal needle. Patient is usually just under local anesthetic, so it's injected like lidocaine into the area where the injection's going to be, and the needle goes down through the annulus and then into the disc. And our gel has radio opaque product in it, so the doctor can see the gel flowing into the disc and know when the right amount of gel is in the disc and it's in the right area of the disc.
Do you use trigger point injections when you're administering this?
Yeah, that's usually up to the local doctor. We let the local doctors, the patient's doctor, decide what's best for that patient. A lot of our patients is just standalone hydrofil, except for the local anesthetic. They're not getting anything else. Some patients, the doctors just prefer to do some blocks while they're doing it. So it just depends on that physician. Usually these are interventional radiologists that are spine oriented, or they're interventional pain doctors that, work on the spine routinely. That's usually who the doctors are that do this injection. In the United States, we don't see a lot of surgeons, orthopedic spine surgeons actually doing injections. That's just not what they do.
It's phase 3 trial. What type of patient are you looking at there? Is it the same as the first 75 or is it slightly different?
Yeah.
Because the publication is coming out on the first 75 patients soon. Is that right?
Yes, correctly. It should be published here in December in the Journal of Pain. This is a randomized trial. So 2/3 of the patients will get gel. 1/3 of the patients will get a fake injection. The patients are randomized. They don't know whether they got gel or they didn't get gel in this injection. Nothing else is
Okay.
injected if they're not randomized to hydrofil. Nothing is injected, but the patient doesn't know which one they got. And the randomized patients will continue to get standard of care. So if you're randomized not to hydrofil, you'll continue to get standard of care, which are, like you said, blocks, injections for blocks, different injections for steroids. They can get things like that they would normally get. If they go to a certain level, like they get a spinal cord stimulator inserted or they have some kind of surgery, then they're a failure in that group.
In that study,
Yeah.
in that arm.
And the
Yeah,
main thing we're
okay.
looking at is ODI, which is a Osweiler disability scale, which we're looking for the patients to give us it's kind of like their daily living, their daily activities, how disabled they are and then also NRS. NRS is a pain score of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst and 1 being less.
And when you're looking at this trial, how long are we following the patients for post-study closure?
Yeah, the patients will be followed for 5 years after the study. The main endpoint is 1 year, however. So at 1 year, the patients we can look at all the data and see all the data at 1 year.
And you'll also have the 75 patients. How long you been following those for now?
We followed the 75. Some of the patients have been followed to 3 years, but those studies stopped at 2 years. So we have the
Okay.
75 patient, like you said, the 1-year manuscript will be published here very soon. And then the 2-year manuscript is right behind that because we have 2-year data on all the same patients.
Yes, I saw that in the press release. This is a long-standing disease, so I think the main question is if how long does the hydrogel actually last for?
Tony, you want to take that?
Yeah. So, I'll give you one anecdote, and then I'll talk about the data we have in our trial. So, I mentioned that generation 1, which was based on the same polymers to form the hydrogel, We implanted a gel in a patient in Oxford, UK in 2006. I maintained ties with the surgeon who did it because we worked together and we consulted with him when they started this company. In 2018, the patient who had this gel implanted had to have a fusion for an adjacent segment. So as part of that fusion surgery, 12 years later, they removed the hydrogel implant that had been put in 2006. We received the implant and we tested it. It still was up to the standard that was required for implantation. So we have one gel lasted perfectly pristine 12 years. Now, what are we required to do for the FDA? We can't say that it's it never goes away, but as part of the studies, we have to do wear testing and fatigue testing.
Mm.
We've done fatigue at a couple hertz, cyclic loading out 10 million cycles. That shows a 40-year lifetime of these gels. And the test is designed to fail. It's just to give you a little bit of the durability. Our gel survived the fatigue testing. It had some wear. Everything should. It's designed to wear. It's up against metal platens. But during the testing, the silicone ring holding it had to be replaced every 2 million cycles. So we had to put 5 silicone rings, but our gel lasted the entire test. Yes, did it have wear? Of course it had wear, but we showed it lasted these 10 million cycles, which is about a 40-year lifetime with our loading that we would have. So the answer is, we expect this to, at least have a 5 to 10 year lifetime and probably more. But we can't speculate or put anything down that we can't prove with the FDA. So
the also point there is with our animal work, after we injected a disc once, we came back later and injected it again. So you could have re-injections along the way. So if 5 years or 10 years in, you needed a little bit more gel pumped in, it can be done.
That was my next question. Can you do top-ups?
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you just describe when you put the needle in, what actually happens with the Hydrafil, Tony?
We inject the Hydrafil into the inner disc, inside of the disc, into the core, into the nucleus space, because at that point, the nucleus really is like a Swiss cheese. It's not continuous. It's desiccated in a lot of these cases. And the gel flows into the void spaces. And as it gets in there and it gets to body temperature, it cools down and forms the gel. So it's no longer a fluid. It doesn't flow. It's intercalcated with the material. And then once the injection is complete, usually these injections itself, the actual injection takes 2 to 3 minutes with the skilled surgeons. The needle's held for 15 minutes to make sure the gelation's done, and then it's withdrawn.
And the gel seals itself off, basically.
And the gel seals itself up. And one thing we do is when we have the needle in, we actually put the plunger down, a stylet, which is a plunger, down the needle to make sure no gel stays within the needle and gets pulled out.
And then the patient lays prone for about an hour afterwards. We leave the patient laying prone on the table for an hour because we don't want them putting pressure on the gel right away. And then they get up and they're able to walk out of the facility.
It's amazing. I've had the intrathecal injections and the trigger point injections, and they don't last that long. So this would be revolutionary for people with lower back pain.
But that's what we think.
And that's the feedback we're getting from the people who have been treated.
Yes.
Okay.
The patients who have been treated are very, very happy.
Okay. So we look forward to the 75 patient publication, the 1 year data and the 2 year data. You mentioned earlier about you've got 7 or 8 sites and you're probably expanding out to 20 sites in the United States.
Yes.
Europe.
There's 11 sites are up and running today, and we can go to 25. We're probably going to look within the first part of 2026 to add 5 or 6 more sites to that. Patients could go to, it's called hydrafilstudy.com. And on there, there's a questionnaire if patients want to see if they're eligible for the study, but it also tells them where the sites are. So they can also put in a zip code and it'll tell them how close the site is to them. So we have sites in California, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Birmingham, Alabama. Where else am I missing? Colorado, Texas.
It's all on the website.
Yeah,
I
all on the
saw them all
website.
listed on the website.
Yeah.
Just another question regarding the Hydrafil. Is there any adverse event that could occur from the use of Hydrafil?
So during our first 20 patients down in Colombia, we had some patients where some gel came out posterior. So the gel came out into the canal where there's nerves, right? And it caused some numbness or pain in some patients' legs. That's when we learned that we cannot put gel in patients that have large annular tears. Okay. So we were not looking for that at first. And we learned that that gel was easily removed. A little bit of gel that was touching a nerve that was causing that pain that was actually removed. And these patients are still doing fine too. But that would be the problem if the gel came out posterior into the canal and then pushed up against the sciatic nerve, which is going to cause either numbness in a leg or leg pain. We've shown that it's easily removed if it happened and came out. But we have learned from that who the right patients are. And so now we do a better job looking at the patient's MRI and something called a discography ahead of time to make sure that the patients don't have large tears in their annulus going posteriorly.
Is there any sensitivity where you will get minimal adverse events associated with the gel itself?
It's a very inert material. All the polymers we're using are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. They're all off the shelf. You know, I know you mentioned a background in pharmaceutical. Just about every one of these are very common pharmaceutical excipients. People are ingesting daily, putting on their skin as creams. So they have very low risk of
Hypersensitivity. Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about regarding your trials, regarding Hydrafil itself? If you want to summarize in 3 to 4 bullet points about what you're doing?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, the trial's underway. That's our big step here to be commercial in the United States. It's going to take a couple more years. If anybody's interested, like I said, hydrafilstudy.com. Go to that site. You can learn everything you need to know about it to see whether you're a patient or whether a friend or a family member might be a good patient for this. And we should be able to start going commercial, a slow rollout commercial we plan for Europe starting next year. And who knows where else we might go. CE-MDR allows you to go to a lot of other countries too, besides just in Europe. So we'll see, but we're looking for partners for that.
Bill, can you just tell the listeners what CMDR actually means?
CE is there's a notified body. It's your authority in Europe, just like the FDA is in the United States. It is the authority over all the European countries. These are separate. There's more they call notified bodies who review all your data, data, safety, everything. Look at this and say, yes, this device is safe and it has efficacy. So it works too. So it took over a year to go through that process with the notified body of ours in Europe to get that. So it's not an easy one to get. It's the second best regulatory approval in the world.
Congratulations. And this is a device, right? So can you explain the regulatory process associated with the device?
It's a device that's a little different than phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This is considered, a trial like a phase 3 trial would be for a drug. So it is your large trial that obviously, needs to have significant endpoints behind it. A lot of safety that's required in this trial. The sites have to be audited. A lot of work goes into this, just like a phase 3 of a drug. Once the data is done, it will be collected. We have an outside statistical firm, and we have a data safety management board that's made up of doctors, which are orthopedic surgeons and spine doctors, who will look at the data too and tell the FDA if they think the product's safe and durable and being able to use on patients commercially.
And I wish you both every success moving forward, especially with the clinical trial and enrollment there. With your extension into Europe, obviously, every patient with lower back pain with degenerative disc disease will be highly interested in finding out about your trials and where those sites are. So, Tony, any questions or any answers from your side?
No, just I'm excited to see people use this. As someone who, had this come together as a thought in their lab 25 years ago, to see somebody treated and doing well with this, it's very satisfying. Makes me
It's an
feel pretty
amazing
good.
feeling.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we want to thank you, John, and MedInsights for giving us this opportunity to let people know about ReGelTec and Hydrafil and what's coming.
When we first spoke, I thought this is an amazing potential breakthrough for lower back pain. As you said, Tony, it's debilitating, not only for just general day-to-day, but the economic impact on people's lives is horrific. So thank you, and we wish you all the very, very best from MedInsights Unleashed. And to our listeners out there, you've got all the information on this episode to go to hydrafil.com and make sure that you investigate disc degeneration and what it really means to patients. So thank you both and good luck. Bye. MedInsights Unleashed disclaimers. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered healthcare advice in any way. The podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The use of the information and material linked to the podcast is at the user's own risk. MedInsights Unleashed is not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of the podcast. Importantly, please consult your healthcare provider for individualized guidance and treatment. Thank you, and we look forward to you being with us on the next MedInsights Unleashed podcast.